Hello, YouTube. It's Gavagai, and Wolf has joined me. Oh, I think I just went live now. I jumped the gun. This is Gavagai, and Wolf has joined me here. The topic in this video is basically the gospel. I've titled the hangout "The Gospel According to Gavagai," and this is just. I was thinking about this afternoon, and the core of the Christian faith is really the gospel message. And as I grew up in church and believing the gospel message, I always held it in such high esteem and things. But as I began to kind of question my faith and have serious doubts, and I reflected on the nature of the gospel message, it really I really started to see it in a different light, and so that's kind of what I wanted to look at in this hangout. I invited a number of different Christians that I've interacted with on YouTube, and nobody was able to make it. I don't know if this was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I didn't plan ahead really. I just had some time on my hands. Waiting for the Packer game to start tonight, and thought I'd go ahead and start a hangout. So I guess first of all, what is the gospel message? Is the first order of business. So I think virtually every Christian denomination identifies the gospel as kind of the singular and core of the faith. It's a message from God to mankind, and it's the in that message he kind of tells us how we can be saved. Well, so the first question is, from what are we saved, and why do we need saving, I suppose. And the Bible in Romans chapter 3, verse 23 says that everyone has sinned, and because of our sin, and this is from other parts of the Bible, everyone who has sinned is worthy of hell, and if we don't get ourselves right with Yahweh, then we will be cast into the fiery pit or the lake of fire, and it's a pretty bad place, and that will happen for all eternity. That's where we will spend the rest of eternity. So just right off the bat, it basically starts with a threat that we are, in some sense, deserving of eternal torture, and just that thought alone, that every single human being deserves eternal torture, seems pretty perverse, because there are a lot of people who are decent people, and they're doing their best to live their lives in a way and get along with where they get along with each other and take care of the people around them. They're even willing, in a lot of cases, to lend a hand to people beyond their immediate circle of family and friends. And my brother is one of those individuals. Hello, Matt. Welcome. I'm glad you could join. My brother is one of those, and when he lost his faith years before I shed my faith, that was one of the things that kind of occurred to me. Is he's a really nice guy, and when I first found out that he lost his faith, I was very upset. I cried for pretty much 24 hours, and prayed, and I was very disturbed at the thought that that my brother would be going to hell. So, and it wasn't until years later that I really started to kind of try and piece this together, and question whether or not anyone is deserving of eternal damnation. Matt, do you want to give any input there?
No, it's nonsense.
Okay. So the next point. Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome to pop in anytime here, Wolf. The next kind of part of the gospel message is that there's a way that we can escape this. And
who is the gospel given to?
I'm sorry?
Who is the gospel given to?
Well, I mean, to anyone who reads the Bible, I guess, right?
That's not what Jesus said. Jesus was asked by his disciples why he spoke in parables, and he said what?
I don't recall.
Cool. When you recall, you'll know why the gospel is not for everyone.
Well, let me look it up. I mean, I want to know, Matt. I mean, I'm interested.
Well, the problem is, though, as usual, you're in here speaking about the gospel, and you don't know the gospel well enough to be speaking about it. So why are you talking about something you don't know about?
Because it's a big influence in our culture.
So what? So what you do is you learn about it first, then you speak about it.
Okay, well, that's why I'm here.
Because then, no, what you're doing is you're trying to learn about it while you're talking about it. You're talking about it first, and people are having to say to you, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about that for? Don't you know this? Don't you know that? Don't you know this?
Yeah, okay.
Well, he's speaking from his own personal experience. I mean, I think he's fair. I think it's fair that he can do that.
I don't. He's speaking from ignorance. He doesn't know what he doesn't. He thinks the gospel was given for everyone. Jesus said different.
Okay, so what does he say?
Well, isn't it true that we've all sinned according to Christian theology? Is that not true?
Yeah, of course it's true.
Okay.
So it's for people who are willing to accept that who are willing to accept the Christian religion based on faith, right?
No.
No, Matthew 13:10 verses 10 through 17 says, just as Jesus responding to the disciples' questions, why do you speak in parables? And he says, to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given.
Yeah.
For the one who has more will be given, and he will have an abundance. From the one who has not. I'm sorry, this translation is really awkward to read. That's the English Standard Translation. I'm going to find a different one that's a little easier to read aloud. Bible Gateway. New Living, that's what I like. Okay. You are permitted to understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but others are not. To those who listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given, and they will have an abundance of knowledge. But for those who are not listening, even what little they understand, they will have taken away from them.
Okay,
that
so
is why I use parables.
Why doesn't that describe your experience?
Because I spent 30 years of my life struggling to listen and to learn and to understand.
Is struggling to listen equal to listening?
What else can you do?
It's trying to do something doing it.
Well, I mean, what more could be done?
Nothing. You can't do anything. That's your problem.
Okay, so
if you're not one of the elect, then that's it. You're never going to understand God. You're never going to understand the scriptures. You're never going to perceive spiritual things. You've been passed over. God has no interest in you.
Do you understand the scriptures?
Of course I do.
So can you explain why it is that that it seems like the majority of humanity has been created just for the sole purpose of being tossed into
That's not.
eternal damnation?
I don't grant you that's the truth. The scriptures
Okay.
don't teach that.
Well, what is the purpose that they've been created for?
For the glory of God.
Okay, it is to bring glory to God that He created beings that will spend the vast, vast, vast majority of their existence suffering in eternal anguish.
That is, I don't believe that's the case. The scriptures don't teach that.
But that's the, I mean,
That's
you
your
can
view.
derive
That's
that
your
from.
view. That's your mistaken view of Christianity.
Well, how do you explain it?
I explain it by what I said earlier. You're ignorant about the scriptures. You've never seriously studied the scriptures. You don't know what they teach. You've never done serious research into alternatives apart from what you were raised with. So you're like someone stuck in a box when there's a whole world of other boxes existing outside of your own little box, and that's the only thing you can see. What's inside your own little box.
Well, I've endeavored to try and learn, and if you
I
have
don't believe
input,
that.
if you have input, I'm more than happy to hear it. But
My
all you're
input-
doing is saying that I don't have anything, and I haven't done my
You
homework on
haven't
this.
done, yeah, exactly. I've told you that 100 times. That's my task, to tell
Yeah.
you and to show people that you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Until,
Well, but if you're
until
just
until it sinks into your head, you know what? I don't know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
I
but
need to go and study. I need to do some research. I need to
So-
learn what I'm talking about before
Help
I
me out.
talk about it.
help me.
Yeah,
No,
I am helping you out. I'm telling you to recognize you're an ignoramus when it comes to these subjects.
But if you, I mean, how do I know that you're not an ignoramus?
Because I can demonstrate my knowledge. I'm not left confuddled when I'm asked about a Bible
Okay, so
passage.
demonstrate some knowledge rather than just
I
criticism.
just did.
No, you
That
didn't.
my knowledge is that you have been possibly passed over. That's why you're not a Christian.
Okay.
That's a scripturally based teaching.
Okay. So is there any sense of justice, of eternal punishment?
Yes.
Okay. What is the justice there? If I don't have it in my ability, my power to act in such a way as to gain this salvation, and I will be punished eternally for something that I have no power over, how is that just?
That's not what you're being passed over for. You're being passed over for your own sins that you commit during your life.
Okay, but are you being passed over for sins that you've committed?
My sins are covered by Christ.
Why
I'm not in the
why
same
you
position
and not
as you.
me?
Because God selected me and not you.
Why?
Through his own will.
Okay. But again, I mean, is there any rhyme or reason to that?
Yeah,
Because
God's justice. Who are you to question God's justice?
I'm a human being.
So what? You're an insignificant human being from the perspective of God. He's passed over you. You're going to hell. That's it.
So basically, our minds don't, our feelings don't matter in land of this authority, right?
So our feelings, our sentiments, our views don't make or create reality. Reality exists independent of our feelings.
Okay, but here's the thing.
If the reality is that God exists and God is just and our perception of his justice is flawed and mistaken, that's the reality of it. It doesn't matter that we feel injustice towards that God. It's wrong.
Okay, I feel like you've made...
Would that be true?
Possibly, but you have to first. Right. You can't just. Here's the thing. You can't just equate reality with Christianity at first. You got to find that. It seemed implied, but you have to establish Christianity.
What's a conditional statement? First. What's a conditional statement?
A conditional statement is when you basically have a possibility and you just say if it's basically a hypothetical. There's basically conditions to where it could be the case.
That's what I presented. If God exists, as soon as you hear the word "if," and then you're being presented with a conditional. If God exists, and if God is described as the way the Scriptures describe them, then it doesn't matter how we feel about that God or his justice or our perception of his injustice. We would simply be wrong. Is that true?
No.
Why not?
Not not if there was
Again,
another. If there's a
I know
higher
what you're
sense of
saying.
justice that deity has to
how
abide by.
we cannot get. Well, first of all, God, if He exists, does not. There's nothing exists outside of God like goodness or justice. God is justice. God is goodness. That's His nature. There's not. It's not something that exists external to Him to which He is subservient.
Can he change justice?
God is justice. He cannot change his own nature. Can you change your own nature from being a human being? Can you become like the picture you've got on your profile just by willing it?
No, and that's something
Exactly.
that
So
my
you
own
cannot
essence is
change.
not something that I have control
Right.
over.
So God,
Run.
exactly, and God's essence is goodness, is justice, is mercy, is holiness, is love. He cannot change his essence, his essential being.
But
Mr.
you see,
Bell, do
go
you
ahead.
do you hold on, Ron? I want to see something right quick. Do you value goodness, love, and justice amongst all?
No, I value God above all, who is those things. There are no things that exist outside of God which are of any value.
It seems that it seems that these values, because these are human values,
No,
goodness,
they're
love,
not.
justice,
I don't
etc.
grant you that. That's begging the question. If
How is
God
it begging the
exists,
question?
because what you're assuming is true, that which is under dispute, whether or not God is justice, goodness, mercy, or I've just asserted that's what God is on my view, and you're saying, well, no, these are things that are outside of God's existence. These are human values. I don't grant you that. So you need to provide evidence that they are solely human values and not derived and contingent upon God.
Okay, see, here's the thing. Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, hell no. Hell no. Hell no. Fuck that.
Yeah, what was that about?
I was about that cowardly son of a bitch. Anyway, never mind. He's an idiot troll. Anyone who associates with Benny, please fucking block that piece of shit. Anyway, god damn it, my fucking train of thought was lost. Run, go ahead. I need a fucking break.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, I mean, is there any reason that we would have to provide evidence that justice comes from somewhere besides God, and you do not have to provide evidence that justice comes only from God?
No, I've already stated if God exists and as God is defined with those attributes, then that's the reality. That's my conditional statement. It's not an assertion.
Okay. So, but I would say that there's doesn't seem there to be any reason to believe that.
According to whom?
To me,
But what? So what? Where have you looked for reasons? What evidence have you evaluated? We've already been through this.
okay. Well,
You have evaluated no line of evidence for the existence of God to any sufficient degree of research to have an informed view
this
on
is not
whether or
this is
not
not the topic of discussion right
that
now.
is the
We're
topic.
talking
The
about
topic.
justice.
Yeah, and you don't, and you just made a statement that there are no reasons to think something, and it's about the subject of the question of the existence
No,
of
what I
God.
said is there doesn't seem to be, and to that point, what I mean is I have not been made aware of them, and if they
What?
exist,
Who is going to make you? Whose responsibility is it to make you aware of these things apart from yourself?
anyone who believes that
Why
they
would they
have.
have a responsibility over you? Why are you so lazy? You don't take responsibility for your own
I'm not
knowledge.
lazy. I'm here.
Now
I've,
you're here
I've
talking
invited
about things
several
you don't
people
know about.
and made an open link to anyone who believes that they have the answers. Now,
So, and
again, if you want to share the wisdom and
I
knowledge that
am.
you
That's what
claim
I'm
to
doing.
have, okay,
That's what I'm
that's fine.
doing. Giving you an education.
I appreciate it. So,
Welcome.
so from my perspective, when I think of justice, I think of you know, the things that are laws and kind of the theory behind the laws strive to accomplish in our societies.
And they fail every day.
Well, in what regard do they fail?
Because they legalize and call justice things like abortion, which is an immoral action. Things like same-sex marriage, which is immoral. Things like adultery, which is now accepted practice in our societies. Promiscuity. All of these things, all of these things in a secular nation are now thought to be moral.
Let's consider the basis on which we punish people. People who have committed crimes that we would all agree are morally wrong.
Crimes. No, we wouldn't. Why is murder wrong? Why is it wrong to murder someone? Give me your objective moral base for saying that anything is wrong.
It harms another person.
Wrong. What's wrong with harming another person?
I wouldn't want it to happen to me, and it's something that we all pretty much all agree on.
A sadomasochist wouldn't agree with you.
Well, they don't want to be harmed themselves in most cases.
Yeah, well, they do. That's why they're masochists. They enjoy being hurt. They enjoy pain. They want to be hurt. They want to be harmed.
Most of the time, they don't want someone to kill them, right?
How do you know? Well, you can go anything short of killing.
Okay, but they don't want to be killed, and that's what's under discussion.
That's because it's not. What's under discussion is justice. Not of one particular thing, but of all crimes.
We brought up
murder. How do you know the masochist doesn't have the right view of humanity, and everyone else has the wrong view?
Why would the masochist have the right view? Do you believe that the masochist has the right view?
Even if I did have that view, how would that demonstrate that they don't have the right view and my view isn't wrong?
Because we wouldn't exist if we. I'm sorry?
Are you appealing to majority to determine morality?
No.
Cool.
I'm appealing to reason and to.
What reason? We're both using reason.
How is the masochist who wants to harm and kill people?
He doesn't.
Or a psychopath.
He wants to have harm to himself, not other people. The sadist.
I'm sorry. The sadist. Yeah. So how are these people?
How's that not the right way?
Yeah, that's sadist.
Yeah, you're right. How is that rational?
How is it not rational? Why? What gives you this grasp on rationality? Because you don't agree with something, it's irrational?
No, that's not what makes it rational or irrational.
Right. So what makes it rational or irrational?
Sustainability. Whether we can have a society where
it's irrational.
Rational does not. You won't find any definition of the word rational that talks about the sustainability of human existence. None.
Okay, yeah, but we're talking about. I mean, obviously, if they're going around doing this, they obviously have no rational consideration for the consequences of their actions.
Why is it obvious? Why is it obvious? They're doing what's moral.
No, that's begging the question. You're not answering my question.
No, that would be you're begging the question by saying, but you're saying, obviously, they're going about doing things which are irrational. That's begging the question.
No, I asked you, do you think they have a rational consideration for the consequences of their actions? Yes or no?
Why would it be important for anyone to consider the consequences of their action?
Okay, obviously we're part of a society, and we recognize that obviously our actions have an impact on each other.
Why should we care about society?
Well, we're a social species. I mean, we come together, we form societies for the sake of
being a social species. Being a social species is just a byproduct of evolution, a purely chemical, physical process happening in the brain. We know that. We're capable of overcoming that. We're capable of saying, well, okay, I know I have these feelings of empathy, but they're nothing more than neurons firing in my brain that I put value on. I know they don't have any real value, so I'm just going to ignore them. live as I want to live, do as I want to do, take from people what I want to take, and if
and
anybody
come
tries to do the
and come.
same to me, I'm going to kill them.
No, well, we also come together collectively and form a society for the sake of self-propagation. That's why we That's why whenever we see that's why whenever we see
What's wrong
someone try to
about
kill
that?
someone before reproductive age, that we actually
We do
have a
that
red
all the
flag for
time.
that, because other
We
than
do
that the
that all.
species would die out.
What nonsense! We do that all the time. And it's legal. Abortion.
You're
Yeah,
begging
that's
the
actually
question there.
Not
you are
begging the
begging the question.
question.
Yes, you
God,
are.
it's preventing you from begging the question. When
You're moving the
you're assuming,
goalposts.
I'm not. You're assuming
Yeah,
that
you
the
is.
fetus in the womb, a developing human being in the womb, is not a person worthy of respecting of their life.
Oh yeah. Well, if your God is real, then that means He's control of everything and governs everything. So if that is the case, He is the biggest
That's moving.
advocate
That's
for
moving the goalpost.
abortion
That
in
isn't.
existence.
That,
No.
that
No.
doesn't.
You
That
wanted to switch it
doesn't.
to abortion.
That
Let's
doesn't
talk about it.
logically follow. It doesn't
Yeah,
logically follow if God exists that He's in control of everything that happens.
the first time I brought that up, you said, "So what?" You wanted to shirk off, like just not imagining that.
Again, how does it logically follow that if God exists, then God is in control of everything?
So is that so? Let me. Are
You're
miscarriages
not
outside of
answering my
God?
question.
Is that what you're saying?
What?
Are miscarriages outside of God if God is in control of everything and
God
governs
isn't.
everything?
Why are you assuming that God is in control of everything? If He gives people free will and people exercise their free will,
You don't
why?
believe that people have free will,
How
Matthew.
do you know that? How do you know I don't? How do you know I not? How do you know I don't believe in compatibilism?
Because you said the other day that you don't believe in free will.
Do you know what? Do you know what? Do you know what a determinist compatibilist is?
Yes,
What is it?
I know what it is.
And what's a free will compatibilist?
I Matthew,
It
what
goes
is your
basically it goes
position?
both ways
What
basically.
is your position?
A person can be a determinist in respect as that there is no free will in relation to some um, specific area, but in
Okay.
a limited context, people have the freedom of choice to do things. That's what compatibilism means. It's compatible with determinism.
So that's your position?
It's an option I consider seriously. Why wouldn't
It's
I?
Because it's
well, the other day
convenient.
when I brought up something and made an assumption that you believed in free will or that a person
That's
would.
because when you talked about free will, you're not talking about the free will I'm talking about. You're talking about complete free will, not
Okay.
deterministic compatibilism.
Okay.
So again, how would it logically follow if God exists that God would be in control of everything?
Didn't you just say that not too long ago?
In relation to the God of Christianity, yes, that would be the case. But I also qualified that by saying directly and indirectly. So God is not directly in control of everything that happens, which is what you are stating, but directly and indirectly, because God sustains the universe by the power of His own existence.
But if God
No
is
God, no
capable
universe.
of preventing naturally occurring abortions and miscarriages, which from information that I've seen, it's somewhere between half and 2/3 of all fertilized eggs are miscarry. Then is he not in some sense responsible for all of those deaths if those are actually legitimate human life that's being lost?
So what? What's your point?
The point is that he doesn't seem to be too concerned
So
about
what?
the life of fetuses.
So what?
No. Run. You're a human. You're a puny human. Who cares what you think, man?
Right. Yeah. So
Exactly. So you need to justify your moral evaluations of God when you don't have a moral standard upon which to do so.
my moral standard is based on reason and empathy.
What
And
is empathy? Tell me what
it is
empathy is.
it is the ability to kind of sympathize with other people and
And from
feel
where is
their.
that derived?
I'm sorry.
From where is empathy derived? What's its ultimate derivation?
I would say that it's an evolutionary
Cool.
development.
And does evolution have any directed goal towards morality that you
No.
can demonstrate? Cool. So,
Well,
um,
actually,
does anything supernatural exist?
that's you need to answer that question.
No, I don't. I can ask that question of an atheist.
What was your question?
Does anything supernatural exist? Are you a naturalist? Do you believe all that exists is a natural, physical, material world?
No, I don't believe. Well, okay, so there's separate questions here. Does anything supernatural exist? I don't know. I've not seen any evidence that it does, and I don't have a
Right, so you
belief
lack
in supernatural
you lack
things.
belief in supernatural entities.
Yes. To what was the second question?
Do you believe that in naturalism, philosophical naturalism?
No, I believe that there are kind of transcendental or
Like what?
well, I mean, like the logical absolutes, for
The,
one.
those are abstractions. We're
Yes.
talking about real objects,
What is a real?
not
Can you give an example?
abstractions. It's something that has actual existence, like a person, a universe,
In what?
a
I mean, I
being,
don't know what sense that would be.
a thinking
He's asking.
conscious,
Okay,
a
okay.
thinking conscious being,
That
not
would
abstractions, not
that would
things that
fall
don't
under
have
the
actual
same
existence.
category then as supernatural, wouldn't it?
No, it wouldn't. Supernatural is defined as that which is of the mind only or derivative from the mind. Natural is that which is universe contingent.
So basically, do you think nature is all there is, just to help out?
I don't know. I mean, it's all I experience.
Okay, let's just say yeah for the sake of
So
argument. Just keep going.
Okay, so what empathy is ultimately derived from evolution. Evolution is no directive towards morality that you can substantiate. So all your empathy is reduced to chemical neurons firing your brain in a certain way that you place extrinsic value on, call empathy, and then you say is some sort of standard for making moral decisions about whether to fuck your neighbour or not. How do you get from a chemical process happening in your brains to moral behaviour?
Because it's implanted in us through evolution that
What chemical
we.
neurons firing in our brains? That's what's in us. There's no soul in
Right.
your
Actually,
understanding.
if that
Go ahead, Wolf.
morality is a specific set of morality is a specific set of behaviors actually brought about through evolutionary biological process for the sake of maintaining differential reproductive success. You basically
Right.
in order to survive long enough to pass down our
Right. You're
genes,
getting the message.
we need to recognize the impact that we have on each other. Hold
So
on,
you're saying the same
in
thing
order
twice.
to maintain survival.
Cool. So
Well, I'm going more in depth with it. So I mean, it's pretty
ultimately,
much intrinsic with every social
empathy.
species.
Otherwise, empathy and our sense of morality is nothing more than a chemical physical process happening in our brain to further the objective of evolution. It has no intrinsic value in and of itself. It's just something happening in our brain to further evolution.
What else, where else would value come from if not from us?
An extrinsic
So
source.
self-propagation doesn't matter.
No, why would it matter?
Because I want to see our species further on into the future. I mean,
How
call
does
me
that?
crazy.
Okay, how does what you want make something important universally?
How does what a God wants make something important universally?
Because God would be the source of absolute knowledge.
So
You are
what?
not. So you are not. I presume you don't claim that
No,
yet.
you're right. I don't claim
Yeah.
that. But why would we
Yeah.
concern ourselves with what a God does? We have our own minds. We have our own ability to think.
Because you
And
recognize if you've got a brain anyway, you would recognize, hey, you know what? I'm limited in my thinking abilities. I'm limited in how much I can grasp of the universe. I'm very limited. I'm a finite being. And then you would say, well, wait a minute. Here's this infinite being, unlimited in its knowledge, unlimited in its power, a true source of morality, knows absolutely whether a thing is right or wrong. Why would you not subject yourself to such a thing and go with your own finite, flawed, subjective view over an objective standard for morality? Why would anyone do that and call themselves rational?
Would it be okay if I take a minute or two to answer that question?
Just answer.
Well, I want to answer without being interrupted.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that would be a great thing, sort of, because what we have is we've got a book that was written by people claiming to have access to a being like that.
I'm not talking about the God of the Bible.
Okay, well, then what? But that's what you're pointing to.
No, I'm not.
You're gesturing to that because that's what you believe.
What I was answering is I was answering your question. Why would we subject ourselves to an extrinsic standard outside of our own thinking and being? That source, that absolute source, could be anything. It could be an ultra-intelligent, super alien species for all we know. A highly advanced alien species with an absolute grasp of morality. It could be an inanimate object that from within, like a computer, but it's an infinitely powerful computer that throws out this information. All of them would be superior to us. That's the point. And we should subject ourselves to them if they exist.
Okay, so but how would we recognize whether or not this alleged force or entity or culture or what have you is superior to our own? I mean, what method would we use to verify that?
Again, that's a separate question. What the kindergarten stage we're at right now is getting you to recognize that if such a standard existed, it would be rational for us to subject ourselves to that over our own thinking.
Yeah, but I don't accept that such a standard exists.
So you accept that. Cool, but you accept it would be rational to accept such a standard if it existed.
Yeah, I mean, but you would have to have some. Hold on. Well, listen.
In light of factual evidence, it would actually matter. Yeah.
Right, and if that only makes sense if we can identify that. If we have enough.
Cool, but how do you identify if it exists or not?
The burden of proof's on you, man.
No, yeah, of course, but there's a question to be asked. How would you go about identifying if such a source existed?
I would have to use my own value judgment of that whatever system is being proffered in order to make an evaluation of it.
Absolute nonsense. You're not being asked to evaluate whether or not what it's giving out is moral or is not moral. You're being asked to assimilate and find a way to establish whether such a being or thing has existence in the real world. Now, how would you go about that?
I would look around and see if there was any evidence of something like that.
So
but
when are you
in order to hold on.
When are you going to start doing that for the existence of God?
I've done that.
You've not. I've demonstrated in other hangouts with this guy. I've demonstrated in other hangouts with this same guy that he has no sufficient knowledge about any argument for the existence of God that would put him in a position to say that he has an informed opinion about those arguments. None whatsoever, not even one.
Are you done?
Yeah, do you deny that?
Yes, I did.
So,
I
so
have.
which argument do you know thoroughly not well enough to say you have an informed opinion about that argument in depth?
Well, if you're depending or your
Which
It is a
definition of,
argument?
Kalam
hold on.
cosmological argument.
Yeah,
So
if you're if you're defining,
Are you
if
claiming Will to have a sufficient grasp of the Callum cosmological argument
I
to make
have,
it to have an informed view on whether its claims to be sound or not?
yes, I've heard it. I've
I
heard
did.
it.
Yeah, I've
I
heard
never
William Lane
addressed
Craig
the
talk
question
about
to you. Your name's not Wolf, is it?
I'm sorry.
it.
I never
Yeah,
addressed the
he
question
was
to you.
addressing me. He was addressing
Oh,
me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard William Lane Craig basically go along
So what's the
basically that
argument then? Tell us what the argument is.
okay, for everything that exists has a cause. The universe exists, therefore the universe had a cause, right?
Okay. So anyone unfortunate enough to watch this display of ignorance, look what he just said. He just misrepresented the Callum cosmological argument. It
No,
doesn't say for everything that has a cause. It says for everything that begins to exist has a cause. So even from the onset, just by asking you to give us what the argument is, you demonstrate you contradict what you stated, that you have sufficient knowledge about that argument to have an informed view upon it. When you're asked to present it, you can't even present it properly.
that's semantics at best. Like
No,
just,
what it
just
is,
because.
it's an exposure of the fact of the falseness of your claim to know that argument.
I mean, if obviously everything that like all you said was all you did was put the word begin in it. I mean, like if
Yeah,
I mean
that's
all
very
that stuff.
important. That's very important. What if the universe is eternal?
Well, we have to. Well, that's why we're asking questions and having this discussion now, isn't it? I mean, it's
What I'm
kind of.
saying is that's why the wording of the premise is important. That's why philosophers like William Lane Craig actually take time to make sure they're constructing their argument in a careful, precise manner, only to be misrepresented at every turn and corner by internet atheists like you, who in their arrogance think you know the argument. You don't.
No,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because someone
I
can't.
actually. Hold on, run, because he's you know, this is classic Matt Bell, and this is why I like him. Okay, so you think the Kalam cosmological argument makes a decent defense for the existence of God, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's coming a little bit strange because the argument it assumes two things. One, that the cause. Well, actually, what do you think? Let me ask you a question. What do you think the cause? What do you think the cause was, basically?
The cause is identified in the conclusion of the argument. I don't need to think about it. I can see it by knowing the argument that obviously you don't know because you just asked that
No, no, no,
question.
no, 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 no. I'm asking you. I'm asking you. What do you think the cause was, and how do you know?
The conclusion of the column is the cause is God. That's what it concludes. That's what the argument concludes. You don't start off with the conclusion. You finish with the conclusion.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just asking you to like state your position. So if that
Well,
was the
my
case,
position is
everything.
the Callum cosmological argument demonstrates that God is the cause of the universe and that God exists.
Okay, but God, if God exists, everything that begins to exist has a cause. That must mean by the logic of the argument that God has a cause. So I
No,
would have to ask, what?
God didn't begin to exist.
Sure, he did.
So I mean, what?
According to which definition of God did he begin to exist?
He
Hold on a second.
exists when
I don't
Moses
want,
invented him.
Ron. I don't mean to cut you. I don't mean to cut you off.
Just to demonstrate there, this is the level of intellect that Ron can bring to the discussion. Okay? He can't critique the column properly, so he's reduced to trying to mock the column in his ignorance of it to try and rescue some of his reputation from anyone unfortunate enough to watch this guy in his constant and repeated displays of ignorance about evidences for God.
Matthew, I'm about to boot you because you've
I
completely
don't care.
railroaded this
Hyperbole.
again.
I don't
That's a serious
care.
hyperbole.
You, to me,
So the whole purpose of this hangout.
I can mute you as well, you know.
Well, my
Okay,
suggestion.
well, you should have kept him here. I want him. I want him to answer the last question.
Go ahead and ask it, and he can post and complain
It's
about it.
fine. He's gone. I know he's a dick, but I like talking to that opinionated fuckhead.
I don't
You
mind.
don't know the Kalam cosmical argument, Ron. You are a retard. The hell you doing being a secularist, boy?
I don't
You're a fucking
mind
anteater.
dealing with him in other hangouts. If it's his hangout and he wants to, go on and on about the Kalam, that's fine. But to come into someone else's hangout and yank our chains until he railroads us back into the Kalam discussion is enough. And he wants to use the term to know an argument or to be even familiar with an argument to mean that you can reiterate it or regurgitate it, and probably only in the form that he accepts and likes. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've heard the Kalam. I heard it back when I was in school. I've heard it reiterated by his hero William Lane Craig and things, and it doesn't convince me because I think that there are some serious problems with it, and he and I have discussed in the past. I identified that I had problems with the very first premise, being that whatever begins to exist has a cause, and I mean
Which objection did you bring to that?
I'm sorry?
Which objections did you bring to premise one?
Well, I mean, I think it loads into their ideas that there might be something that didn't begin to exist, and just that mere idea is not something that we can verify or prove. It's something that.
I have.
Go ahead.
I can point out other objections. The first one is that we don't truly see things begin to exist. We only see things being formed out of other pre-existing things. I mean, for instance, a biological organism will be formed out of the carbon, etc. materials that it's made out of, and all those atoms and so on, like conservation of mass energy, are not being created or destroyed in this process. And so ultimately, if there's any kind of creation of matter, we aren't directly witnessing it in very many instances. To the extent that we do witness creation of matter, this is objection 2, I guess, we do it, I suppose, in the form of virtual particle-antiparticle pairs. That is not truly matter creation, but sort of a transformation of vacuum energy to matter, and also seems to happen furthermore without a direct cause. It's a random event. Hawking radiation is probably the prime example of this being observable. So when smoke clears, we don't have an inductive basis for assuming premise 1, and in fact we have, at least in the terms of the virtual particle-antiparticle pairs, sort of an observed instance of something analogous to creation, at least a spontaneous transformation of energy into matter that doesn't have a cause. So at this point, I would say that we have additional grounds to be skeptical of premise 1 beyond just that it is loading the argument.
Right.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Yeah, quantum mechanics, spooky physics, particles moving in and out like randomly. Yeah, it's that. And I mean, you see how he's willing to pick at straws. I mean, like this He is such an opinionated bullshitter. Oh, you don't. Oh, it's everything that begins to exist, not everything that exists. I mean, what the? It's fucking silly. And like, he was so willing to move the goalposts and get opinionated and say so. I mean, like, you can't escape this. You can't escape the scrutiny. You fucking old bullshitting Scotsman. I don't give a fuck. You can be arrogant as fuck. I can be arrogant as fuck too. That don't mean you're right. You're still full of shit, you crazy old man.
There's another question too, which I've seen rehashed on infidels.org. That is, I think, very pertinent. In what ways are things causes? I believe it's Quentin Smith's argument from the logical impossibility of divine causation. I can dredge up the URL if need be, but generally we consider things that are causes to have spatial and temporal associations with the effect, and also some kind of law, principle, or similar, the knowledgeable framework or principle that enables this effect to be caused. So in the case of the deity, at least, this is, I think, Hume's version of causation. In the case of deity causing it, well, it doesn't have a spatial location, doesn't time doesn't really exist before the Big Bang to have the cause preceding the event in time, and clearly it's a violation of all principle because we only see it happening once. So it fails on all three counts. And when you try to go in search of other notions of causation that it could satisfy, blowing away all three of those Humean ones gives you trouble establishing that there's some deity causing the universe. So, Quentin Smith has more eloquent and, of course, vastly more detailed articulation of this argument, and it's floating around on infidels.org. I'll dredge up the link. It'll take me a minute or two.
Well, and to me, it all boils down to you can have whatever kind of philosophical argument you want, but if you don't have any evidence to back it up, or if it just, I need to be careful about this because I know there are things that intuitively seem incorrect that actually pan out to be true. Like for example, the fact that we are moving at however many thousands or millions of miles an hour around the sun and spinning on an axis kind of defies intuition, but it's verifiably true. But to me, if someone posited that there was a 7-step argument that concluded with a moth must have created the universe, I would pretty much reject that out of hand. I don't have to listen to the whole argument. I mean, I'm willing to look at it, and if there's some reason or evidence beyond that argument to suggest that it's plausible, then sure, I'll entertain it. But just asserting that there's an argument that exists for some personhood, some abstract personhood that created everything that we can observe and see and beyond, that just is not credible in my opinion, especially given the fact that there does not seem to be any evidence beyond that. And he wants to keep defending this rather than the actual Christianity that he believes in, because it's easier. It's out there somewhere out in space, and it's not tangible. So, and again, these are something that's so far removed from the topic of this this hangout that I just had enough of Matt Bell's cosmological baloney for tonight. Join us again tomorrow, Matt Bell, and we can go over it again if you like. But tonight's topic is different.
Yeah, you had the gospel. Is that
exactly? So we discussed the issue of hell, and that's kind of where we got sidetracked as far as eternal damnation and things. And in my opinion, it seems rather twisted that billions of people will be tortured for eternity just for the fact, and if like Matt Bell, and not every Christian believes this, but that just the deity kind of seemingly arbitrarily, although I'm sure he would say that God has some moral standard that he applies, or some justification somehow for choosing the people that he chooses to redeem. But from our perspective, it doesn't seem rational or justified in any way that some people who sincerely strived to come to understand and believe, but in spite of that came up empty-handed, they will be burned in hell for eternity. That doesn't seem just.
At the risk of strawmanning, I can present some of the counter arguments that I've run into
regarding the gospel, or
the defense of, I guess, the reprobate, or the defense of non-universalism.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Well, one of them is that essentially hell isn't really that bad. It's merely separation from God, and well, people that hate God or whatever, of course, wouldn't want to be stuck with him. Another is, of course, that in fact they aren't subjected to suffering, but are annihilated. Another is, of course, an analogy with an assembly line in a factory where the defective units are essentially discarded. And
I don't like the idea of being considered a defective unit that just is worthy of being discarded, but that's messed up.
Yeah, why don't I stop with those three and try and give someone a chance to respond? Or I believe we have an actual Christian here who might be able to, well, defend along whichever angle they actually believe.
Hey, Robert, welcome.
Hi, Rob.
I hear a lot of people trying to figure out if there's a God or not.
I'm not really trying to figure out. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Run your moderating.
Yeah, that's fine. We're really just discussing whether or not the gospel message makes rational sense.
Oh, okay. Is my fan too loud? It's hot down here in Orlando today. So.
I don't hear it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I'm you know me, man. I'm one that believes that there is, and I've been watching pretty much from the offset of your hangout. So I've got a question for atheists and for you guys. Why not? You know, why is it really all about, you think God is a moral monster? Is that why you don't want there to be a God, or don't think there's a God, or at least the God of the Christian Bible?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in first, and then other people can give their thoughts on this. But I mean, to me, I don't say that there's no God because I have trouble with the idea of eternal punishment or what have you. But I can't accept the idea that the God of the Bible is a just God, for the fact that, for example, Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed and mutilated people, um, when he was in prison, accepted Christ as his savior, allegedly, and if that's true, if it was sincere according to Christianity, then he will live in eternal bliss in heaven. Meanwhile, another person who lived out their life trying to help people and just couldn't accept uh, the idea of the Bible and that story, they'll burn in hell for eternity, regardless of the fact that they did everything in their power to be kind and loving and help people.
Okay, that's pretty extreme. Okay, but yeah, it requires there's one requirement, um, and that's to believe on His Son according to the Christian worldview, right? You have to believe on Jesus Christ. Otherwise, you're out. Now, I don't know if Dahmer actually became a Christian or not, but on the other hand, the person that rejects the Son of God their entire life, admittedly so, I guess I could say, yeah, that happened. You know what I mean? But it does seem unfair, I guess, from the outside looking in. But at the same time, I mean, what is it that really offends God? You know what I mean? Is it murdering people and putting their heads in your refrigerator, or rejecting Him? What is it that He dislikes more? You know what I mean? If you can enter into that question at all, I know you don't believe in a God, but let's for the sake of argument say that a creator exists. He created all of us. We're in this giant fish tank we call the universe, and have no clue where we're at in the fish tank. We don't even know where the outermost limits of the fish tank are. We just know we're in it. There's evidence of that, definitely, but we deny the fish tank maker, and that's pretty horrible when you think about it. I mean, imagine yourself a fish, and you go out and buy a fish tank, and one day there's a rebellion, and you come home, and the fish have decided that they're going to take over your house. Now they're not okay with just being in the fish tank. They want to run everything. So that's what I kind of view atheism as, that we don't understand as Christians anymore. We lose sight that atheism is at war with God, I believe. Wouldn't you agree with that? I mean, at least that part of it, that atheism is fighting against Christianity and what God has offered as a peace offering through His Son on the cross.
I would disagree.
Yeah, go ahead, Nadia. Well, I was gonna read. Ben Barry is kind of following along with us at work, and he's typed in the comment section here that he's open to it. I assume he's meaning to the idea that there's a God, and he says if there is a God, I would think God does not reward gullibility. So, that's similar to along the lines that I would say I'm not against Christianity or the God of Christianity as much as I'm interested in trying to apply reason and ensure that my beliefs are based in reason to the extent that I'm able to do that. And if God knows everything, Benna says, he would he would be offended, wouldn't. Oh, I don't know. I'm having trouble piecing that last bit together. It's been a he's
Gonna bail you out for a
sorry.
second. I mean, I look at it a little more simpler. Okay, I look at things. I have a simple viewpoint. Okay, first off, I say I don't know. Okay, I don't know everything. I can only go by my experiences in this life, personal experiences that I've had, and they've been, some of them, very strange. Okay, outside the box kind of strange stuff that some could even label insanity. Okay, so with that in mind, I mean, you're going to have to take what I say with a grain of salt. But to reason, I think if you're looking for evidence, okay, of a creator, I think the best way to find that evidence, one place to find that evidence, is man himself. Look what we have done since our inception into, let's just say, the 20th century. Okay, at the turn of the 1900s. Look what's happened in the last 100 and almost 15 years now. We Where did all that come from? I mean, from planes to cars to machinery to computers to satellites to space probes to robotics to science. I mean, a lot of that is just amazing. Okay, to begin with, all right, because we were in such horse and buggy condition, scientifically, I like to put it, and candles and lamps, oil lamps before that for thousands of years. And then all of a sudden, in the last 115 years, there's been this explosion of creativity and discovery and knowledge. I think that points to a God, because when you consider the fact that we create things, and the Bible says that, and here's where I connect it, the Bible says we're created in His image, and if He's the ultimate creator, then obviously we take after Him. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's an evidence in itself that things do, get created. We create things all the time, but yet we don't give license to the Creator that He might have that ability as well. So that, to me, is reasonable.
Yeah. Well, to me, I'm sorry, Nadia. Do you want to
go? I can remember my stuff well enough. Go first.
Okay. So, the idea that basically it's from the Enlightenment that we made the progress that you're talking about. And what happened in the Enlightenment is that they looked back at texts from the ancient world, the Greeks and the Romans, and took some of their ideas and said, okay, if we start to investigate the world without, and take measurements and look for cause and effect and things, and try to eliminate things in a way through experimentation, so that we can, find the actual cause, and limit the number of variables that are involved. Then we can make progress and start to understand things better. So it was this method of investigating that really led to all of this progress, and they left out the idea that there were supernatural things in play. So it's almost like the opposite, that leaving the gods and ghosts and superstition out of things. And Ben and Barry has made the comment that the Dark Ages were fun, right? And that's exactly right. I mean, there were all kinds of things. I mean, they would pit two people against each other who were in an argument, and basically whoever won the fight or the brutality of an engagement, that they're the ones that were blessed by God basically in their minds. Well, that doesn't mean that they're blessed by God. That means one person's stronger than the other, and that's why we don't do that anymore. They would torture people, and that were heretics and things. All of these things that came out of superstition and religion, we've rejected now, and I think our society is better for it. The more we move toward kind of rationally based ideas and concepts. And the same with our government systems. We've shifted from theocracies and kind of the divine right of kings to, well, we are capable of coming up with rules and laws that benefit everyone equally, that treat everyone equally regardless of their financial status and things, or that's the intent anyhow. And that everyone should be accountable, whether they be priests or lawyers or doctors or anyone across the board, no matter what station or role you play in the society, that you have to be accountable, and that you have to abide by the same laws as everyone else. Those are the things that have allowed us to make the progress that we have. When we had, go ahead.
I was going to rattle off a list of ancient inventions and such, or the backup these things, but go further. You're
Yeah, well, I was pretty much done. I was just going to say that when we restricted ideas and only allowed whoever had the power and what their religious beliefs were, they got to say and dictate what's heresy and what's not. And that really restricted the ideas. Well, now we leave that open. We say, everybody has a right to express their ideas, and then kind of the court of public opinion and also the court of evidence and reason will kind of decide the winners and the losers in as far as ideas and what gets accepted more generally by society.
Okay.
Okay. And I was going to back up Runga's point a little bit. The technological progress, for instance, of the post-Enlightenment period is a convergence of a number of factors that never came together before. It is truly unique in human history, but there have been quite some strides in the ancient past that are quite notable. For instance, Aristarchus in the 3rd century BC devised a heliocentric model based on using trigonometry and such to estimate the sizes of the sun and the moon, and believing or on the basis of their sizes, as he measured them with limited but reasonable accuracy, that the smaller things rotated around the larger. The Hindus did it likewise a little bit later. Eratosthenes measured the radius of the Earth. The flat Earth was not universal by any means. The Greeks had gears. The Antikythera mechanism is not by any means unique. Water wheel powered almost, I guess, machinery you would call it. Had the Roman Empire, Western Roman Empire, on the verge of what some people term almost an industrial revolution. The Tang Dynasty, or the Song Dynasty. One of those was doing something similar in like fashion, water wheel powered. The ancient technology and so on was by no means unsophisticated. I mean, Galen, for instance, dissected cadavers and such, and had an idea of the nervous system. He could trace nerves even visually. The medicine and surgery and so on was actually surprisingly sophisticated. Nothing that's unreasonable for their time. It's not like Ancient Aliens or anything, but or the History Channel, but still, people were making strides all throughout history, and converging to the point where there's critical mass is more like where the Enlightenment was. That ingenuity, that human ingenuity, was there all along. For instance, Archimedes effectively had something on the order of the integral calculus, this method of equilibrium. Isaac Newton, of course, had to come by a few thousand years later, but to popularize it and connect it to the differential, but still, I mean, that ingenuity is been there all along. The Enlightenment is not that unique or unexpected an event.
Bartholomew, you've joined us. Would you like to chime in here, or we haven't heard from you? I'm not familiar with you either.
No, sorry, I'm new. I wanted to chime in like 10 minutes ago, but we've kind of moved past that, so I'm just gonna wait here for a second.
Okay. Well, can I ask, are you a Christian or are you an atheist?
Neither.
Okay.
That's interesting. And I mean that. I'm not being sarcastic when I say that. Can I call you Bart?
Yeah, Bart's fine.
Oh, okay, Bart. You can call me Bob. Anyway, that really, everything that you said, I agree with most of that. The Enlightenment part of it, I would say that's, we could argue about that, but I don't think it's worthwhile. But yeah, obviously something has occurred, okay, along the way. You point to your reasons. I'm not denying your reasons. What I'm saying is, and I could go off and say a lot of these scientists were Christians. I've heard that argument before. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. What I'm saying is that just simply the fact that man creates things. Okay, and we've had an explosion of this creativity in recent decades, obviously. Okay, prior to this, we were, they invented the wheel way back when. Obviously, didn't go much further. They found that horses or donkeys or whatever could pull a wagon, and so they stuck with that for whatever reason. Maybe because we were fighting each other too much, but all of a sudden, in our day and age, okay, this explosion of knowledge and creativity is, I think, reasonable to point to as evidence for God, because the Bible clearly says that we're created in His image, that we're His offspring, that He's having children, okay? So we're pretty creative, wouldn't you say? I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ron. I just want to ask you a question about that, though. I've seen videos before. You're not a huge supporter of the theory of evolution, right?
No, because I'm not. I believe in that 6-day thing.
Okay, so if taking what we know now, let's say the scientists that do, accept the theory of evolution, if they apply that knowledge now to doing things in like the fields of medicine, developing vaccines, or looking for sources of causes of cancer, do you think that they should just stop all pursuits in that field completely because it relies so heavily on evolution?
No, absolutely not. I don't
So,
think that.
so you admit evolution. So evolution is fine, providing that it's benefiting us this way, but not good when it's held in contradiction to the Bible.
Well, I don't have a problem with them researching anything that's going to do us good. Okay, I just don't give the credit to evolution.
Well, in the case of numerous things that would contradict essentially the Bible, or even maybe doctrinal or more generic ideas. I mean, for instance, split brain experiments on epileptics give us something of a serious questioning of whether there's a single person. And well, let's say if there is, then which hemisphere of the brain is it in, the left or the right? And what is the other one doing if it doesn't have a soul there? I mean, so when science is coming up with all these things that are contradicting more than just say the creation. I mean, like I said, the soul, right? I mean, how do you cope with that? How do you reconcile that?
All right. Can you simplify the question?
Well, I'll give an example of a different thing besides creation that science contradicted. But when we're seeing things in the world that contradict your spirituality or religious belief or whatever.
Like what?
How do you reconcile that?
Like
well, the one I gave was split brain, where they sever their corpus callosum in epileptics to prevent seizures, and the two hemispheres act somewhat independently, and raise the question of whether there's a single person. Which half of the brain is the soul in, and what's the other half doing if it doesn't have a soul?
Right. If you Google Ramachandran, what is his first name? It's
Interpreter.
Yeah, he's a neurosurgeon, and he's done research on this, and like Nadia suggested, they split the brain basically into two separate hemispheres, and what they found is two distinct personalities emerge because the hemispheres are not communicating from one to the other side, and so the person has two identities. And in at least one case, there was a person who one side of his brain believed in a god and was religious, and the other side was not religious and did not believe in a god. It was an atheist. So did they, in essence, then create two souls? Or, and how does that play out?
Okay, I understand the question now. I would say that biblically speaking, that actually proves the Bible, not tears it down. Because within me is what the Bible calls a new creation in Christ Jesus. I have this born again existence in this flesh, which is still the old man. So the duality, to me, that this guy's research is obviously bringing up in the brain, that would actually prove the scriptures, not tear it down. Because there are things, put it this way, okay? Let me give you an insight into a Christian's walk, spiritual walk in this flesh, okay? Once you're born again, and this isn't a sermon, by the way, I'm giving you straight up the dope inside scoop, okay? There's a battle that goes on continuously every day in every believer, at least in the ones that are learned enough in the scriptures that have taken the time to ingest all of the scriptures rightly and and study God's Word in a way that they come to this understanding that we're at war even with our own flesh. So this part of the mind that they're discovering that's obviously, saying that there is no God makes perfect sense. And the other half of the brain that is saying, that when they did the experiment, it'd be interesting to know if that was a born-again believer that they did it on, first of all, because that makes perfect sense. Because if you were to divide me up, there would be parts of me that would want to sin, go against totally everything that the Bible says. And on a daily basis, I have to have self-control enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to do those things because they're not pleasing to my Father. So that would be the new creation in me that occurred, going on 35 years ago now, that still wants to go against God. So, but back to what I was saying earlier, I don't think that any of this stuff that you're talking about really applies to what my original statement was, that I really believe that our creativity, when we create something, points to a creator.
Well, how would you address the point made that this creativity has, in many respects, been there all along, and it's more like a societal organization that allows us to preserve and build on prior work that's enabled something like the technological explosion of the past 300 years?
You mean it's the knowledge has been there all along, and we've just now brought it back to the surface? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the creativity and intelligence has been there all along. The preservation of knowledge and building upon prior knowledge and inventions is new as a result of societal organization.
Well, I don't deny that there's been progress, and some would point to that and say, well, look, that's evolution. That's not my, that's man evolving, they would say. I'm not arguing that at all. What I'm pointing to is we create things. Name one thing on the earth, okay, that didn't have a designer, that didn't have a creator, that man has come up with. Just one. Just name one thing. And you wouldn't be able to do it, okay? Because someone had to sit down. I don't care if it was a collective thought over thousands of years from philosophers from, the BCs to the ADs, and now we finally, figured out, put aside our differences in religion, and decided that, hey, we are going to experiment on things and find out facts about, chemical processes, atomic, discoveries, all these things. Yes, that's true. Okay, but at the same time, where's this creativity coming from? Okay, and why do we have it all of a sudden? It's seemingly to be in an explosion of it, and the Bible clearly says in a book that's probably, I'm going to guess here, 3,000 years old, at least 2,600 years old, that in the last days knowledge would increase and men would be traveling to and fro, and that's found in Daniel.
Well,
so it speaks in this seemingly ancient goat herder's book of a time that was going to be future when he wrote it, that there was going to be this explosion of knowledge. And I'm just curious, how many people are on the road right now traveling? How many people are in planes right now? All over the world. And there was a time when that was not the case. Now we have been stationed, okay, literally going thousands of miles an hour orbiting the planet in the space station. So, I mean, if we're not going to and fro, and if knowledge hasn't increased, then, that would be a ridiculous statement. You know, we obviously are increased in knowledge, and we are going to and fro, and man's knowledge is increasing. So, is the Bible correct? Was this man, this goat herder of a prophet named Daniel, 26 whatever 100 years ago, that wrote these words, just lucky? As it pertains to guessing, is it a Nostradamus moment that he had? I mean, I don't know. I think that I look at things like that, and to me that's evidence. Okay, now I know it's not the kind of evidence that an unbeliever doesn't like, but it's there, and it's there for the accepting or the rejecting. It's kind of simple, right?
Well, what about the huge technological advances that came during the times of the Romans? That certain things that were lost for centuries and had to be rediscovered later.
Yeah, I have a brother in Christ that believes. I don't believe fully in that myself, but he believes that there's technology that was lost back in those times that would that would even surpass our own today. But I don't really follow that.
Well, I wouldn't say surpass, but I mean there are certain definitely like mathematical principles that helped in stuff like architecture that weren't rediscovered until like much far later on. But I mean,
I've got to say.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. So I was going to say we're not talking ancient aliens here. I mean, they discovered things that were remarkable for the time, but they're not anything extreme. And they certainly don't surpass today. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What did you say?
I said we're not talking ancient aliens here, Eric von Däniken. They were remarkable for their time, but they were not anything beyond today or anything.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying they.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they were, but the thing was that there was definitely advantages. There were advances. There was a time of great advances in that time that were lost out in the centuries that followed. And it wasn't until a time when people started becoming more literate, people that started questioning the things more, that this actually we were able to start advancing into where we are now.
Let me ask Ra a question. Ra, would you agree that your argument is based on intuitive reasoning? Because you're talking about like the growth of knowledge, and you're saying like in terms of like design, like for let's just say computers or laptops and stuff like that, because we put time and creativity into building that thing, and because it's complex, we could assume that we have design. Is that what you're saying?
No. Okay. The only reason I bring that up is to reason with you guys, in the hopes that you'll take another look at Scripture. My belief, my faith is based on what I experienced 35 years ago, and what I've experienced during the last 35 years. So I'm just reasoning with you that in pointing out, hopefully the obvious, that we create things, and why is it that we deny that there could be something greater than us that created us? That's my whole point. And I don't base my faith on that. I don't base my belief on that. I believe that that day that I met Jesus Christ, that I was actually born of the Spirit of God. I can't convince you of that. It doesn't, it like I said, these things that happen to me would be considered in this day and age, especially here on YouTube, as borderline insanity. So why even go there and try to prop that up? You know what I mean? What happened 35 years ago to me was for me, and if it happens for you guys, that will be for you. Okay, it has to be God that reveals Himself to you. So and that has to be an experience that you participate in, that I have no control over, other than to say that yes, this happened to me, and witness. I give a witness to you guys that yes, something occurred in my life that changed my life. So, and it was Jesus Christ.
Okay, yeah, that's your personal experience. I get that. It's just for the sake of clarity. Yeah, I agree with you that we do create stuff, and that there has been a well, albeit gradual growth in man's knowledge. But you know that but the overall complexity. I mean, the reason we're able to do this is because we have a neural network inside our brains. We have which allows us to gain the overall capacity to test the structure and consistency of our world through Ma's predictive power. I mean, that's how he got to the from the Dark Ages to Mars civilization in over 300 years. I mean, we basically have the potential to produce these models and actually apply them to the real world and see if we could actually bring up some overall complexity or some kind of consistency with the world that we're seeing. And the reason we're doing this is because it is our way of becoming plastic to the environment over time. That is sort of like the simplest explanation we're working with. But if there's uh, a higher force governing all that, then we would need like further investigation to if we want to revise our views about these things, possibly with more empirical evidence and more research into this.
We've been trying all along. People have been trying to build up kind of organized, stable societies that would, have eventually given rise to our technological state today and maybe even in the future. But the trouble is, things like military defeats, natural disasters. The Greek Dark Ages were depleting the soil or deforestation of Greece and so on. So when they're hit by that, they get disrupted and they lose their knowledge and so on. And thus far we haven't been hit by that. We've been stable for long enough to get further.
I think Benna brought up a good comment.
If your experience is true to your experience, does that mean it is true for the rest of us? Is that what the comment you were referring to?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess that hits on the point of, is there such a thing as subjective truth?
Well, I don't want to go there, but you know what I mean. That's kind of been burned down. That house has been over.
Right.
Let's don't go there. But I'm just saying. All I'm stating is to you guys is my faith that the way I see it, I've taken a step back from what the known universe as we know it, and I try to picture it, and I think there's something bigger, okay, something far more intelligent, so infinitely more intelligent than us, that has created all this, and that's all I'm saying. So, and I believe that's God. I believe that and I believe his son is Jesus Christ. I believe it's the same guy that died on that cross about 2,000 years ago. So that's all I'm saying. I think there's more to the picture. You know what I mean? If you go to an art museum and stand in front of a very large, say 20-foot square painting, and put your face right up to the painting and look at, say, the far right corner of the painting, and that's all your vision can see, I would say that's almost describes what we can see. You know what I mean? In our knowledge, in our known knowledge now that we have right now. 1,000 years from now, we may get to, back up from the painting another quarter of an inch. But the whole universe, this fish tank, that I like to call it, it's a lot bigger than we can even grasp, most of us, with our minds. I mean, there are suns and stars and clusters that, in our current condition and knowledge, that if we were to attempt to even travel there, we'd never make it there. Okay, it's just impossible. So many light years away that we wouldn't physically be able to make it there. So now, if you stand back though from that same picture in that art museum and see the whole picture, that's what I try to do. I stand back and I go, wait a minute, there's more to this. And I think if we're just focusing on man's knowledge right now and see, and that's all we can see, we're missing out on so much more. I think we should look at the big picture, or at least attempt to look at the big picture. And I think it's narrow-minded when we don't. So, and I'm not calling everybody here narrow-minded, but it does point in that direction. You know what I mean?
Well, and to me, I think that brings us back to, you mentioned the Jesus on the cross and things, and that's I want to kind of use that as a transition back to the gospel message, because that's really what this hangout was intended to be about. Whether or not we've got experiences and can know there's a deity is really kind of beyond the scope that I intended for this hangout. But it's easy for us to drift back there. We spent the whole time with Matthew Bell doing the same thing, basically. But so the question of whether or not eternal damnation is that's really kind of the first question that we looked at. But then the mechanism for salvation being crucifixion of the deity's son is another question that to me seems bizarre and cruel and just bizarre is I think the best word that I can use to describe it. Why would killing someone else be the way to satisfy the deity's interest in torturing people? So that's just another big, huge question mark in my mind as I started to kind of re-examine my own beliefs when I was a Christian having doubts. Does anyone else want to jump in and say anything related to that aspect of the gospel message?
I believe the limited atonement in Calvinism is pertinent to this. And are you a Calvinist, Ra?
No, but I believe God is.
Okay. Anyway, that was a major clarification I wanted with respect to atonement. So maybe you could jump in yourself.
Well, I think again, I think we're trying to complicate something that's very simple. Okay, you got to look at the big picture. Okay, who determined that death would be the requirement for sin? And that obviously is God. Now, who's the only one that could satisfy the rule maker? And that would be God. So he comes up with this plan of how he's going to satisfy his rule and still forgive us. And that's simply as simple as it gets. So, you know, forget about torturing his own son. Forget about all of that. Look at it more like going to the doctor. If you've got an amputated hand, I just watched a movie where they had to cut off this person's hand. But anyway, if you go to the hospital and some say if you get there soon enough, and even today now they can reattach that hand. Okay, so there was the need for us to be reattached to what I believe was the purpose in the beginning, that we were to be eternal beings to begin with. Death wasn't the ultimate goal that God had when He created this fishbowl and us in it. Okay, we were always intended to be eternal beings. So to get us reattached to that eternity part aspect of God's desire, you know, to give us life, He had to satisfy this rule that He first put down. He said, "The soul that sinneth shall surely die." So death entered into the picture. Now you've got to fix that. Okay, if you're the creator of this problem, obviously, you know, His plan was to reattach us, those that would receive and believe in this thing that we call Jesus Christ. Go ahead. I see your hand up. Go ahead.
If the soul that sinneth shall surely die, yet I believe Christ was free of sin. How does that work?
What do you mean was free of sin? He got all the sins put on Him.
Yet He Himself was a sinner.
He was. Oh, I see what you're saying. He was free of His own sin. Yeah. But, you know, it's impossible for a holy God to sin, obviously. And it's impossible for the grave to hold an eternal God as well. So, obviously, He was going to come back to life. The goal was for Him to put on Himself. That day, according to the Scriptures, this is what happened, okay? That our sins were placed on Him. That He died, okay, as a propitiation for us. That atonement process was literally He took our sins and was dying for them, so that if we believed in Him, then we could be forgiven and have His righteousness. So an exchange took place, a cure for the disease of sin. That's God's cure. So everything else aside, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Could you clarify if it's for all or the elect?
For all that would believe. And obviously,
okay.
the ones that believe are obviously going to be the predestinated elect, as the Calvinist brothers would like to point out.
Wolf or Bart, do either of you want to jump in?
Yeah. So what's the so from what I'm saying, sorry, maybe I misunderstood you there. So you're saying that so our time on Earth now, before we finish this and go up to heaven or whatever, is just an act of atonement before we can carry on to the afterlife?
No, the atonement was given on the cross. When Jesus Christ shed His own blood, that was the atonement.
Okay.
And God was satisfied that was payment enough to forgive us.
All right. So this I guess that's the part that I don't understand. I'm probably not as well read in the Bible as some of the people here. But so what's the point of the whole living before heaven thing?
The point? That's a good question. So 35 years ago, when I was 20 years old, and I met Jesus Christ for the first time, why didn't He take me home immediately? I think that's a great question. Obviously, he wants us to be his hands and his feet and his mouth while he's gone. And we're here to preach the gospel to those
but why would that be even been necessary? I mean, if like if this is just a pit stop on the way to heaven, why don't we just all be created in heaven, and why do we have to serve all this time down here?
I don't. You know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't know exactly why he chose to do that. But that's how he's, determined it to be. So I don't know. I don't know why God chose to leave us here and become ambassadors for him and suffer through it. There are times, brother, I'll tell you, Bart, there are times that I wish he would have just taken me home right away.
So, okay. So in order for us to advance to level 2 here, or get to the end game, what are the requirements? Is it just simply just like accept Jesus and that's it? You've passed the test. Come on home.
Well, the requirement is pretty simple. First of all, you've got to believe that you're a sinner. If that's the hurdle that most unbelievers can't get over.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but so, I acknowledge that I've done bad things. I'm going to remedy the rest of my life to not do bad things. But if I don't do that last step to accept Jesus, does that mean that I'm going to hell and I failed the test?
Well, ultimately, yeah. If you spend your entire life and hear people like me talking to you, obviously, I'm attempting to share my faith with you guys tonight. That's obvious at this point. And you reject that your entire life, yeah, God will dispose of you.
So when you take a look at the fact that in the entire world right now, it was like 30% of the world is considered Christian. That's a pretty bad fail rate for people that are actually advancing to the next level. You think that God maybe would come along and redesign this to make it more efficient, or is he happy with the fact that he's only getting 30% back?
I would say that 30% is overrated, and it's more probably like 1 or 2%, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of religious people on the planet that claim the name of Christ that don't know the first thing about Christ, and he doesn't know any of them. So I think it's a little more harsh of a fail rate, as you put it, and I think that God's very patient, and he's
I mean, he'd have to be very patient if from your standards now he has a 98% success rate or fail rate, and he continues on with the same plan that he's doing now.
Yeah, but realize this has been going on for a long time, so
it just means there's a longer track record of failure.
Well,
to that point, if his will is that no one is lost, and yet there's this terrible failure rate. What does that say about either him or us or something? I mean, because I certainly don't want to be tortured for eternity, but I can't seem to bring myself to believe the narrative in the Bible.
Well, I don't want you to be tortured for eternity either. But
well, that makes 2 of us.
Okay, but at the same time, let me just give this thought, Nadia, and I'll let you go. I don't want to be a prisoner in heaven. You know what I'm saying? So God's not building a prison. Jesus didn't go to build when he said in my Father's house there are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, blah, blah, blah. Where I am, there you may be also. So he's going to prepare a place in this house that in his Father's house. So it's not a prison. He's not going to build a prison. He's not going to force anyone to go there. See, that's why I'm not a Calvinist. I don't believe that it's irresistible. I think people can resist it. I think that's where free will comes in. I think that it's our choice. We get to choose whether or not we want salvation or not. And, that's the only fair thing. Now, is there any pleasure? Does God have any pleasure in the fact that some are choosing against living forever with Him? No, I don't think He has any pleasure in that at all. But I think that at the same time He's realistic that He's not going to force anyone to go there against their will.
Okay, well, if you, let's say, of course, I'm not wishing this or anything like that, but tomorrow you get hit by a car and die, are you going to heaven?
According to the scriptures, it says to be for a believer to be absent from the body. In other words, my spirit, my soul would be gone from this shell. That is to be present with the Lord. So wherever the Lord is, yeah, I'd be there.
So you believe that tomorrow you're out walking around, you get hit by a car in the state that you're at right now, you're going to heaven?
Absolutely. Convinced of it.
Do you look both ways before you cross the road?
Most of the time.
Why?
For people like you.
I'm just saying, why would you do that? I mean, if you have a pathway now, if you know that
right.
You're going to be like right away. I mean, it's like that. God has this plan for you. You've passed the test. You've accepted Jesus. Then why even bother playing the game anymore?
For your sake. For your sake. For my sake. For your sake. For Benna. For Nadia. For Wolf. For the rest of all the people that I talk to. In the real world, this is the real world, obviously.
Do you get commission on souls saved?
I get the joy of sharing my faith with other people while I'm still here, and there's a reason, and I know that there's a reason why I'm still here. So that's why I look both ways when I cross the street. I don't fear death. Okay, death doesn't bother me. But what bothers me, what I fear, is standing before my Heavenly Father one day and Him saying, "Hey, Bob, why'd you waste so much time? What were you doing down there?" You know what I mean? That's what I fear.
What's your idea of the fate of the reprobate? Is it annihilationist or fiery hell, mere separation from God, or what?
Are you talking about Romans 1, when God turns someone over to their unbelief? First of all, I don't know who a reprobate is, okay? But God does, and when He turns you over, you're done. You're done at that point. I personally.
So annihilationist.
Go ahead.
Is that annihilationist where the reprobate are destroyed and don't have an afterlife?
Am I annihilated? What do you mean? Do I believe in hell?
Okay, basically, she's asking if do you believe that we'll be people who don't believe will be annihilated altogether, or will we depart in the lake of fire?
If you're without Christ and you stand before God on Judgment Day, according to the Scriptures, you're going to burn in hell in the lake of fire for eternity. You'll be tormented for eternity. Now, there are some Christians that believe that it's just, and I love them, it's not a salvation issue, but they believe that it's basically it's a second death, it's termed in the Scriptures, and that they think it's just a one-time deal and you're just gone. I think that undermines the fear of God, that the reverence that should be there, and that Scripture actually gives details that say otherwise. I believe that it's eternal torment. It's severe.
Well, I kind of need to wrap things up here. Let me just put forward one more question, kind of piecing together, the idea of the kind of the threat of eternal torture and then this process of redemption. If a human being, said that he loved you and that you've offended him and he wants to torture you, and then said that he was going to offer himself up as a sacrifice because he loved you so much, and then if you believed that he killed himself, then you wouldn't be, suffer torture or something. Or and because of the weirdness of the Trinity, if he said he was going to kill one of his children, whatever analogy you prefer, um, would you be able to make sense of that, or think that that person was worthy of putting your trust and things? I mean, to me, when I hear that scenario, that we're being threatened with eternal damnation if we don't believe that this deity, sacrificed himself or his son, and that believing that determines, or not believing that determines our destiny for eternity. I find it pretty, both off-putting and so strange and horrific that it's just unbelievable.
Okay, I see how you could see it that way. And like I put in the comments, this is your hangout. I think you should have the last word. I mean, uh, I would suggest to everyone that they take another look and read through the Gospel of John and read through the book of Romans one more time and give it, just, this is my last word, by the way, that, give God one more chance to show you what is true. And after that, it's your choice.
Does anyone else want to put in a last word?
I don't think we really do have choices to believe. It's like, I don't know, choosing to be scared by a spider. You get the impression or whatever from facts that are presented to you, and evaluation of persuasion is ultimately emotional.
Anyone else want to contribute? Or
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
yeah, I appreciate you just dropping in. It wouldn't have been the same hangout without you in here, and you're welcome back anytime. You're much more pleasant to talk to than Matthew Bell. And there's a place for Matthew Bell, and I don't mind talking with him either in some cases. But if he's going to be one trick pony, I guess, then there are some hangouts where it's not appropriate to have him participate. I would like to say one last thing, and again, I thanks to everybody that participated and came and joined us, and I'm agree with Nadia's last comment that it doesn't seem to me that belief is a choice. I don't choose my beliefs. I'm persuaded one way or another based on reasons and my own life experiences and things. And there was a time when I would have liked to be able to just choose to believe, because my disbelief has complicated my life and my relationships with my parents and my siblings and my extended family as well. But I landed where I was, and there didn't seem to be any clear path as to how to turn that around, as far as what I could believe, just because the conclusions that I came to were I just don't see how to avoid them. But the last thing I would like to just say is that I would encourage believers and atheists alike to examine your beliefs and consider whether or not you could be wrong, and what kinds of evidence and reasons would persuade you that you were wrong. Just because it's just humility with what you're believing, I think is an important characteristic, and something that everyone should embrace and try and strive for. We're all, I think, better off when we at least concede that we are imperfect human beings, and that we do make mistakes. So those are my last thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. I'll leave this open for anyone that wants to continue the conversation offline. Thanks all.